And welcome back to Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari. So happy to be here today with our guests. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, I have today Julia and Randolph, who I call Richardson. And Julia is a paralegal, and Randolph is an attorney at different firms, by the way. But they are also the co founders of Justice Southbury. And that's a grassroots organization dedicated to advancing social justice in their community. Now, Julia, her lifelong passion was for advocacy, and it began at age 9 when she founded the Youth Wildlife and Recycling Foundation. And that was after the 2010 Gulf oil spill. Now, Randolph was inspired by his family and a commitment to cultural competence always. He turned decades of reflection into action by helping people to helping his community by leading community conversations toward equity and kindness. Now, Rick and I met on LinkedIn. I was posting, and actually, I was posting quotes from some of my favorite quotes by other people. And Rick slid into my DMs and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you and invite you to do a presentation for this group that I'm a part of, Justice Southbury." And that's all she wrote after that. I met Julia through that initiative and a whole wonderful community in Southbury, Connecticut, through that presentation. Man, it was wonderful. And now we're forever connected. Julia and Randolph, thank you again for agreeing to have this conversation with me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rochelle. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, before we start our conversation about how a small town grassroots group can build a fairer, kinder community for all, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Well, hi, I'm Julia. I'm 24 years old. I graduated from Cornell University with a major in human development and a minor in inequality studies in 2023. I grew up in Southbury for the first 18 years of my life. It was the only place I'd ever lived, so it has been a shaping community for me my entire life. I got into activism, as you said, Rochelle, when I was 9 years old. My sisters and I were really impacted by the environmental impacts of that the Gulf of Mexico spill. And we started just collecting bottles and cans around the neighborhood. That was my first kind of bout of activism. Started collecting bottles and cans, raised the money that we collected through that recycling program, and we raised money for the impacted wildlife. And that was my first, at 9 years old, realizing that as beautiful and wonderful as this world is, it's also an imperfect world, but it's our world, and it's our world to save, our world to help grow. And that really started off my activism, but I continued it through high school with the March for Our Lives. My sophomore year of high school, we're the town next to Sandy Hook, so our community was really impacted by that. I was in 6th grade when that happened, and that's the kind of thing that a community will never be able to move on from. But the way that we have come together and grown from that and learned how to be more engaged citizens really inspired me. I helped to organize the walkout at my school, and despite the threats of suspension, which is someone who never gets in trouble, was quite the threat, we still said, this is bigger than just you and me. This is about impacting our world. And so that was another thread that really weaved into my activism quilt. And Justice Southbury has just expanded it in a way I could never imagine. I'm so proud to be from Southbury. I'm so proud to be a part of this community. I'm so proud to be the daughter of Randolph, who is an amazing, along with my mom, Kathy, just raised us to be engaged citizens. And I'm really just happy to be here today.
Randall?
All right. So, well, I'm a husband, a lawyer, father of three. Julie's the middle of our three daughters. And that was kind of it for a long time. And that was enough. But even though I'm 40 years older than Julia, my real advocacy started after hers did. I was always a reader, a listener, a thinker within my circle as a talker, but I wasn't really much of a doer. I mean, I've always been active, but when I would talk to the girls and say, "Boy, I was born in '61, so if I had been old enough during the civil rights era, I would have been out there marching. I would have been going down to the South and been on the freedom buses. I would have been a freedom rider. I would have done all those things." Always realizing, well, I don't know that I would have. I hope I would have, but how do you know that? So I really was. My wife and I, obviously, we set certain examples for the kids in terms of their own advocacy, but they were really the leaders until George Floyd was murdered, and then that everything changed for so many people, but certainly everything changed for our family and for our little town of Southbury, Connecticut.
Mhm. Yes, thank you so much. And that you've been talking about Southbury a lot so far, but we want to hear more about what that looks like, right? What was born out, and what was the moment, or maybe the conversation that sparked Justice Southbury's existence? Either one.
Yeah, Dad, I can jump in. So, Justice Southbury really started the Sunday after George Floyd was murdered. We didn't know it was going to be Justice Southbury. It was just organized by a few members of our town saying, we're still kind of in the thick of COVID quarantine, maybe just starting to think about going outside again. And we all were, in our homes thinking, this horrible, horrible, horrible thing has happened. We're so angry, we're so fired up. How do we channel this into something more than just sitting in our homes and independently feeling these things? And so a group of about 50 of us, Dad, in that first week gathered on the busiest street corner in Southbury. And for context, Southbury is a small town, so the busiest corner in Southbury is still not very busy, but it's right where we get on and off the highway, so it's got the most traffic in our town, so we knew it would have the most visibility. We just gathered with some homemade signs, 6 feet apart, masked, but it was a way for us to channel these such severe emotions we had. I had posted about it on my social media, and I had many people reach out saying, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening. I wish I did. Are we doing this again?" And so I was talking to my dad. I said, why don't we do this again? Let's do it again next Sunday, same time, same place. People want to be there. We're craving this community. We're craving this collective advocacy. Why don't we just do it again? Why not? So we gathered there again the next Sunday. I said a few words, and that was kind of the beginning of it all. A great story from that day was I had made some more signs with my friends, and I was collecting them kind of as the rally was starting to dwindle. And there was an older couple that was bringing their signs back to their car. And so I kind of approached them. I said, I can bring those, I can put those in the pile for you. Thanks for coming. And they said, "Oh, no, we'll just bring them next week." I turned to my dad and I said, "Okay, there's going to be a next week." And then after that, it just took off from there. We now had our 285th, Dad,
Yes.
285th consecutive rally this past Sunday. So we have not stopped gathering at that street corner at Sundays, every Sunday at 2 o'clock since May 25th of 2020. So it's been 5.5 years of consecutive weekly rallies. And You know, my dad and I share the titles of co-founder of Justice Southbury, but it's just the community. I mean, people just kept coming, the consistency of showing up. That's how Justice Southbury began, and that's how Justice Southbury continues. Um, it really taught me that meaningful change can often start quietly, but with that presence and that persistence, it can grow into something we never even thought was imaginable. I mean, being here today, talking about this, no one could have predicted that this is where, especially in a small town like Southbury. I love Southbury, but you know, it's a small rural town in Connecticut. It's not the type of thing that I would have grown up thinking something like this is possible. But it just shows the power of community and the power of persistence.
Yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes people ask us, well, what made you guys different? So many towns in America, people gathered spontaneously after George Floyd was murdered. When you hear about it, you hear about the rallies of the summer of 2020. Why did we keep going? So, as Julie said, it's been 285 consecutive Sunday afternoons in the snow and the rain and the heat. Um, and I think three things really grabbed us right from the very beginning within those first couple of weekly rallies. The very first one. Now, Southbury is a town of about 20,000 people in central Connecticut, and it is 90+% white, and it's more red than blue. So when the people gathered that first week, one of the first things that happened, my wife and I are three daughters at the very end of this long line of people, and there was a black man that we didn't know at the time. I've come to know him since, but he was walking along with his video camera, videoing each person, saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And then when he got to the end where we were, he stopped, he thanked us, and then he turned the camera out on himself. And he was very emotional. And he said, "I never knew my town would come out for people like me."
Mm.
And as soon as he left, we talked about like, why wouldn't he know that? What is it about Southbury that we haven't shown him that? You know, we have to do something so that if someone in his position wouldn't have to question that. So that was really very very emotional for us, and sort of set the tone for what we wanted to do. We also, the second week, there was a guy there who had a sign, which is very resonant for me with what I told you about me being a sort of a couch warrior. Guy had a sign that said, "If you ever wondered what you would have done during the civil rights era, you're doing it now." And I thought, okay, so I can either be the guy who is at home thinking my thoughts about and having opinions about racial issues and justice issues, or I can get out and do something. And so that helped us, inspired us as well. And then there's the quote by Martin that in the end we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Mm.
And that really, again, really grabbed us. Like you combine with what he said with what the black neighbor from Southbury said, and you realize we realized we couldn't be silent friends. We needed to be allies. We needed to be vocal allies. We didn't say, let's do this for 5.5+ years.
Mm.
But we kept going because we thought we could do something positive.
Yes. And woo, I was hoping you would just keep talking so I could gather myself because I keep feeling so moved by uh, what happened, right? And how Justice Southbury was born. Um, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not just me and Julia. We're the co-founders, but we have a number of people who there's a number of people who just come to the rallies. We realize we've got several audiences, and one is just those people who come to the rallies each week, and each weekly rally, including this next Sunday, and every Sunday thereafter, begins with some type of speeches. Either I'll speak, Julia will speak, someone else will speak. We have guest speakers. And so that's, one audience is the people who are actually there at the rally. And hopefully we're giving them something of value. And when we speak about really the foundation of what we do, after the first couple of weeks, we realized that it couldn't just be in a small, mostly white, mostly Republican town. It couldn't just be racial anger. It had to be anchored in something else. And so we we really tried to ground what we do in love your neighbor, not in a religious way, certainly not in a partisan way. Um, but what we've realized is that this is what is this whole thing? It's an experiment in taking seriously love your neighbor, and what does that mean then when when you do what we do? So it's been interesting, and I don't want to step on your emotions. It has been a very emotional journey.
I'd
Yes.
also like to point out too that I think it was really important. We talk about how Justice Southbury is very predominantly white, and I think that highlights the fact that we've kept this going. It's so important to use our privilege. We are able to stand out on that corner and we are able to amplify ourselves in a way that we don't have that fear that our neighbors of color do. And it is so much more important for us to be visible, for us to show that we are with our neighbors no matter what, and to use our privilege for something good, to show. And I think it's important, um, to not, you can say, I'm not racist, I'm not this, I'm not that. But that's a very passive stance. It's important to be actively anti-racist. And I think that is something that we really have focused on is it can be tough to say, to admit that you have privilege. That's a tough thing to say for anyone. But I know as a white woman, that the privilege that I hold in this society and how important it is for me to use that to bring up people and to amplify voices that are not always heard among the crowd. And that's been something that we've consistently tried to make clear. And I hope that we never ever lose that, because there are deep rooted biases in all of us. I have so many biases, but the importance of confronting that, of acknowledging that, acknowledging the assumptions that I have, and propelling this movement forward, knowing that we hold a lot of that, and we are able to bring up our neighbors, to be right there with us, to fight the battle with them.
And some of the
Yeah.
things that have happened that have been the most gratifying involving neighbors. We've had two different families who, as COVID was going on and as they were looking to leave New York City, and Southbury is about an hour and a half from New York City, and they were driving around different communities. We had two families of color who told us the reason they chose Southbury over the surrounding towns is that as they were driving around, they would see our rallies on Sunday afternoon and felt that
Mm.
there was at least this group of non-silent allies that they could find. The two things that have meant the most to us really, a mother called me and told me that Justice Southbury is the reason she feels comfortable raising a biracial child in this town. And another mother told me that Justice Southbury is the reason that she feels comfortable raising a trans child in this town.
Mm.
If that's all, if that's
Mhm.
all we could accomplish, that was enough. So it's really been an interesting. I think you mentioned before in terms of the title, the vision of Justice Southbury is a more fair and kind community for all. As we struggle to put the vision statement together, and it was originally 6 pages long, and we really decided it came down to that: more fair and kind community for all.
Yes, indeed. And thank you. And thank you for giving me some time to gather myself. Yes.
Oh, oh.
So, yes. So, I just wanted to highlight a few things that you said because um, I heard, hey, a lot of us are out here being readers, thinkers, talkers, and not much of doers. Uh, Couch warriors. I'm taking that one, Rick. I'm taking that. I'm taking that. I was like, oh, I like that. That resonated for me. Um, Sixth graders, I believe you said you were in the sixth grade, taking the risk of suspension by walking out for the greater good. And I read that as what guess I'm trying to get in the mind of a sixth grader, right? Thinking, what could possibly happen to me that's worse than this? So I'm taking a stand. Yes, it's nothing, they said the children will lead us, right? Because they don't have some of the filters and the fears of older adults. And what a wonderful opportunity for someone who could, yes, Julia, because there are some children who that suspension might have meant something severe, right? You know, getting kicked out or expulsion, depending on the type of school district that they're in and the type of educators they have and the type of parents that we're working with, right? Because there are, well, I'm thinking about how in Philadelphia, where I am, and I believe it was 1967 when high school students and I think middle school students as well walked out of the public schools, like across the district, to take a stand for having African American studies in Philadelphia. And that's a reality that it's required in the curriculum here. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, following the children stood out. And then just the fact that you just had the 285th consecutive weekly rally. Talk about tenacity, endurance, persistence, and what it can take and what it looks like born out of something that started small and quietly. I just love that because, you know, this platform that we're on right now was born out of a desire to just reach one with every episode. You know, like one person, like, could we be better as human beings? There's the assumption. So some assumptions I think are good. And the one that I'm making the assumption that we all can be better. Yes, we all have biases. It has to do with the way our brains work, in fact. Yes. And so as human beings, we have that in common. What I also love is that from this effort, there are people moving into your community who might not otherwise have done that. And as a Black person who has to make conscious choices about where I live based on race relations, based on how much work I'm going to have to do to have the actual comfort I'm looking for in this new space, looking for people who are neighborly, period, right? I don't care what you look like. Are you neighborly? Are you neighborly, right? To know that there are not only neighbors, but allies. Oh, yeah, right? It's just as important to me to know that I have the type of neighbors that would come and bring me soup if I just came from the hospital, as it is to know that I might have neighbors who rally. Now, if I did not feel that the New England cold was disrespectful, I might move there too. I'm just
Can't blame me there.
okay. I'm like over it. Well, but you never know, right? You never know. But as we are looking to move, that's not one of them. There in Chicago, like
Right,
I
right.
have people I love in both places. Um, but increasing the comfort level of people who have biracial children, people of color, and I did not miss that you said there was a family that said that they feel comfort raising a trans child in your community. Yes, we often, you know, many people do oppression Olympics, right? Mine is worse than yours. It's all connected.
That's why we thought with the focus on love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And we started saying, well, so what, if you really do that, what does it mean? And that has led us to having, Women's History Month rallies and Black History Month rallies and Pride Month rallies and Hispanic Heritage Month rallies. And when there were the killings in Atlanta of the Asian American sex workers, and we said and stop Asian hate, so we had stop Asian hate rallies, and we think we've kind of figured that all of that is important to to not just say we're going to focus on this issue. If we focus on one issue, it's what does love your neighbor mean? And then if you're really serious, you have to expand it. And you talked about the New England winters. Rochelle, you're an example of another type of outreach that we've done. because obviously there's a lot of really great people and great thought leaders who cannot come to Southbury, Connecticut on a Sunday afternoon. So we started we started a Zoom speaker series. We've now had, and we do it every month or so on a Sunday night. We've now had 28 of these Zoom speaker series with people from around the country, such as you. And it's been from people from 15 different states now. And they're
Yes.
authors and judges and lawyers and podcasters and college professors, business leaders, political leaders. It's a way to further the discussion and the conversation that's it's kind of in the hallmark. Julia should tell you about her Take Back the Flag speech, because it really was a pivot moment for us around the fourth or fifth week. Well, I'll let her tell you, because
Okay.
it changed our conception of what we could do on the street corner at our rallies, that it didn't just have to be, not to minimize what it meant to say their name or to say Black Lives Matter, but we
Mhm.
realized that we could increase our sort of persuasive footprint, if we try to expand what we were talking about. So Julie, you want to tell about that?
Yeah, well, I think too that goes along with what Rochelle was saying and Dad, what you're saying. And I'll go into the Take Back the Flag, but I think it's that importance of intersectionality in activism, that one, there it's all intrinsically connected, and to focus on one issue, to amplify one voice, but not to amplify another. It's important to work through. I think it was there's a quote by like Audre Lorde. I'm gonna completely butcher it, but the single issue struggles do not exist because we do not have single issue lives. um,
Mm. That
and I think
sounds like
that's,
how she would have said it.
yeah, I'm sure I'm getting the wording wrong or mixing up some things, but it's basically that gist of, we realize that if we really wanted to advocate for marginalized communities, then we have to amplify the voices of all. And so going into the Take Back the Flag speech, so there was, like my dad said, about the fourth or fifth weekend, again, before Justice Southbury was Justice Southbury, before we knew that this would last any more than the week that we were at. We didn't know that the moment would become a movement, as we always like to say. We got our first counter protester, I would say. A man, an older white man, came wielding a big American flag and was walking around, and just with a kind of a a little groan on his face, and he was, um we kind of knew from the get-go that he was there to counter protest. And at the time, we were just kind of letting people say what they wanted to say on the megaphone that we had before we got our microphone system. And he started saying completely false facts about Black people, very hateful and hurtful things. And we had to, of course, cut him off, because we do believe in everyone being able to share their voices, but not when it is something so incredibly false, and also so targeted to be hateful.
Mhm.
And so we had a conversation with him, and it wasn't really going anywhere. But the next week, as I was starting, I did weekly speeches. And as I was starting to do those, one of my first ones was called Take Back the Flag. And I'd quoted different leaders from, Republican leaders, Democrat leaders from history, historical figures,
Mhm.
talking about what patriotism really is. This man came basically using the American flag as a weapon. Not
Mhm.
not a physical weapon, but more of a hypothetical weapon. Like, look at me, I am a patriot. I am a real American. I am using this to counter what you are doing. When you realize, like, no, we love America so much. That's why we're out here. We
Mhm.
love America, and so we want to make it better. We acknowledge that America is imperfect. Everything is imperfect. There's nothing perfect in this world. America is far from perfect. But
Mhm.
because we're so proud to be Americans, that's why we are out here. And that's what patriotism is about. America was founded on patriots. America was founded on protest and about demanding more because you want a better future for your children. You want a better present for yourself and your neighbors. And so I really talked about how this is what we're doing right here is truly American and is what America is about. We are so privileged to have the freedom to be able to stand on that street corner, to be able to express our views, to be able to protest. That is such an immense privilege that is written right into our Constitution. And it is our civic duty to go out there and use our voices because we are given that. And so that was a big thing for us, was saying, like, no, we're going to take back that flag. That is just as much our flag as it is anyone else's. We love America. We want to see it grow. We want to see it prosper. And that's why we're out here.
Yes, indeed. I love that. You made me think about actually something that recently happened in our area. There was a halal festival, so organized by people of who are Muslim, and most vendors were Muslim at this festival. It was a food festival, right? There was some, general marketplace things there, other products other than food, but for the most part, Muslims of all persuasions there. And I had gone to my car, which was across the street, and to get something out. And as I'm coming back, I see that this little group of people had assembled across the street, not for good reasons. And when I get in front of them, because I can't hear really well until I get in front of them or alongside them, and I see signs that says, we love Jesus Christ, while people are hurling, superlatives at people and telling them to go home. And I was like, that is not the Jesus Christ I know. Like,
Nope.
I was like, I feel ashamed to be a Christian right at this moment, right? I did not engage because they were being pretty volatile. People were kind of yelling at each other, and I didn't engage. But I thought about I thought about that incident when you talked about this man, that there are people really standing firm, right? Like, they want to stand firm on who they are, right? Whether it's patriotism, whether it's Christianity or some other religion, and vehemently opposing other religions versus people's right
Sure.
to believe and have a faith tradition of their own. I mean, these people trying to be out here with their children, be comfortable, right? Multitudes of families. The vendors were primarily Muslim. Not everybody who came was Muslim, right? Like, there's a range of people there. And I thought, this is so heartbreaking, besides being embarrassed because you don't represent the Christianity I understand, but also that you're actually missing out on a great experience where people are trying to have a lovely Saturday, Sunday afternoon. Now I can't even remember what day it was, but it was a weekend afternoon with their families, where you could have just joined in and had harmony and joy, which is what most of us want, right?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couple,
Yeah.
yeah. Couple of things there, Rochelle. Do you want to keep going?
I
Oh,
could have
sorry.
just. I could have just.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need 6 hours or 7 hours to do this
Right.
all.
Right.
The issue of religious tolerance and religious differences and building bridges across these differences has been a real major theme for us. Each year, starting around this time, we have a number of our rallies involve a Love Your Neighbor series, where we invite faith leaders from Catholic churches and Protestant churches and traditional churches, non-traditional churches. We've had rabbis speak, we've had imams speak, just basically come and talk to our group about what does love your neighbor mean in your faith tradition, and how is it relevant in 2023, 24, 25, 26. So that's really been a hallmark of our discussions, is how again, without being really religious, but how can you live out love your neighbor in a positive way, and what is, if you take that seriously, what does it call upon you to do? And you're also, as you're talking about protesters, I think about Julia mentioned that first guy, but there have been a whole number of people. We've realized that it's not productive to just yell back. So one of the things when people, as they often do, roll down their windows, pass us by and yell out, "All lives matter." We just smile and yell back equally. I think it
Yes.
makes them very mad. But
Yes.
my favorite example, favorite slash awful example of a counter protester was a guy the first summer came and he was just going to tell all of us how awful we were. So he came in in a big huff and he started going down the line and yelling everybody, "All lives matter, all lives matter, all lives matter." So being the bouncer of the group, little skinny bald lawyer, being the bouncer of the group, I got sort of up in his face as I wanted to divert him from other people. And I yelled at him, "All lives matter." And he yelled, "All lives matter." And I yelled, "White lives matter." And he yelled, "White lives matter." And I yelled, "Brown lives matter." He said, "Brown lives matter." I said, "Blue lives matter." He said, "Blue lives matter." And I said, "Black lives matter." And he said, "All lives matter." He couldn't say Black Lives Matter. So I said to him, "See, you can't say it, so you don't mean it. You do not mean all lives matter." But it is interesting dealing with the hecklers, and that's been a whole other series we've done, is how do you have these difficult conversations? Julia, you've been such a part of that. Do you want to speak about that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Part of the work that I did at Cornell, I was part of a project that we really stressed communicating across differences. These can be really, really difficult conversations to have, but the importance of actively listening to one another. I think I'm definitely can be the type of person who is halfway listening to the person that is I'm speaking with, but then halfway thinking of what I'm going to say next in my head. And part of this program is really um, is making sure that we are actively listening, just like fully giving the other person our entire focus. And it's okay if then you need to pause and plan your response. That's okay. But so often we're just yelling over one another, having conversations that are just one-sided. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. We're not even acknowledging what the other one is saying. So really affirming the other person that we're talking to. But I also think knowing the spheres of influence that you have too. Um, this is something that we talked about in that course. I was a facilitator for that course, but I started off as a student, and in that class, we read some excerpts from Dr. Beverly Tatum's book, "Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?" And then after that class, I read the whole thing, and I think it's a really important resource. But the author describes the spheres of influence that we have, and we all have these spheres of influence. My boss has influence over me as his employee. I have influence over my friends because they value what I say. But I think starting with the sphere of influence that you have the most influences, which is yourself. We hold the power to be lifelong learners, to actively seek out resources, to really expand our mind to different perspectives. So I always try to start by educating myself, acknowledging my own judgments, and I think that can lead to such more productive conversations with others, to really think and to see, like, how much influence do I have in this conversation, not trying to change anyone's minds, because that can be a hard thing to do, but just seeing what little crack can I try to work through here. What we always talk My dad and I always talk about, that common ground, because that's another reason why we use that "love our neighbor" as kind of one of our slogans. Love your neighbor is, hopefully you'd think that the majority of people on this earth would agree that that is something that you should hold yourself to. Love your neighbor. It's hard to counter that. At least to me, I think it's really hard to counter love your neighbor. So if you can start at a baseline there, and that's what we try to do with Justice Southbury, starting with that baseline of love your neighbor, then we can work through something. But just starting off at such different opposing sides, you're not going to get anywhere with that.
Right.
And especially, you know, there's so much today, so much opposing values, and it's hard to kind of see through all of this chaos. How can you find common ground? I think that's such an important tool to have. And I'm always trying to figure out ways to really take advantage of that baseline of love your neighbor.
That's excellent. I mean, you all are just doing powerfully and wonderfully. I don't even have to ask my questions. I mean, I literally was going to
Sorry,
ask about,
lightning round.
I was going to ask about tough conversations. But first, I just want to reflect back that you're already giving some practical steps, right? To actively listen to others, which is paramount, right? In any relationship that you have, personal, professional, it's a relationship, period, with a human being. And frankly, you know, as I have moved more into coaching, I'm finding that I'm talking to a lot of adults who just haven't been deeply listened to. Yeah, for somebody to actually hear them. And this goes beyond, in some ways, it goes beyond what we're talking about today, right? Your power to actually do something as a small group, as an individual, but it goes beyond that in terms of communicating, just even with your partner, your children, people in your life, your spheres of influence. Yes. Um, and I wanted to highlight the Cornell program. So Julia may or may not know this, but I recently accepted an appointment on a national board um, for the Difficult Dialogues National Resource Center. And so programs like Cornell's are possibly members of our initiative to bring all of those resources to college campuses, right?
Wow.
Like, yes. And for those resources to have support, you know, to have community among other organizations, with other organizations doing the same work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I know,
Congratulations. That's a
yes.
wonderful board to be a part of.
And Cornell has been doing this work for a while, but yes, that's an opportunity at an organizational level, right? To incorporate a course or an initiative. It would be a fabulous first year student initiative for that to be for every first year student, right? Where you could actually change traditions at an
Yeah.
institution, right? It sends the message that we do this. We're
Yeah.
honest with each other, but we affirm each other in this space. Period. You can
Period.
disagree, but you're going to disagree respectfully, right? As the young people, what do we snap?
I snapped.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah,
Love it.
yes, period. Yeah. Okay. Now, what else did you say that? Oh yeah, the baseline. Love your neighbor. Yes, you know, hey, we have to teach some adults how to do that because maybe they did not see effective examples. And we're going to forgive the people that influenced them. Okay? They didn't have the tools that we have today.
Yeah, and that's a big part. You know, what you're hitting on right now is a big part of what we've done because um, the recognition that, especially now with such siloed media,
Mm-hmm.
we always try to. One of the phrases I use all the time: "Put me in your shoes." When I'm
Mm-hmm.
dealing with someone on the other side, um, I don't necessarily say "put me in your shoes," but I understand that I need to understand that person where they're coming from. If I want them to try to understand where I'm coming from, and we talk all the time at rallies that we feel very vehemently about this issue in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we say, how could those people over there think so differently? Well, they're hearing it differently than we are. And when they say, how can people like these Justice Southbury people, how can they see it that way? Well, we're exposed to different things than they are. So to reach across, to bridge across the divides in any way, you really need to at least, you don't have to say it, but you need to think, I want to understand you. I want you to understand me. I want to understand you. Put me in your shoes. Let me understand the eyes that you see the world with so that we can see where there's common ground, see why we disagree about things. And the organization that you just talked about, that sounds wonderful. Julie and I are having conversations now, these national conversations. We're talking to an author out in Arizona who's working with us after her Zoom speaker series speech.
Mhm.
She said, we need to keep this dialogue going. I want to start groups out here in Arizona, and you guys are doing this thing in Connecticut, and let's talk, let's Zoom, let's find a way to expand these dialogues so that we can try to understand each other better and where our common humanity and our common grace comes from and build from there. So
Yeah.
that's it's wonderful that you're doing that.
Oh, thank you so much. And so I'm hearing another step, right? Well, two other steps. I heard listen to understand, right? Like, or talk to people, get in conversation to understand the eyes that they see the world through. So many of us, I spent 38 years and counting in higher ed. Now it's very, very part time, but most of those years full time. And we had a bad habit. It still exists for the most part. It's not everyone, but there's a bad habit of just kind of talking to other people in higher ed only, right? Or talking to other people in your discipline. And those of us who do work for justice, like we're justice centered, tend to be just talking to each other too. Yes,
Yeah.
many of us are in communities. We're in the communities that we're serving, but also not necessarily talking across the aisle, right? Like talking to the people who we need the support from instead, or not support from, but people we want to be more justice centered. Yes. We do want them to see the world through our eyes. There is something keeping that person who doesn't from seeing it. But we actually, if we know that we are on the side of right, right, in loving people and gathering people together, then we need to have a little more courage to talk really face to face and have some compassion for that person that didn't get the message you got.
Right.
Yes, but
Yeah,
really truly understand it.
sure. We haven't talked yet about social media, and again, I know we don't have too many more hours to do this, but we
Yes.
engage in social media each week. And one of the things that I try to do, usually without success, but I try to say to people who oppose what we're doing, say, look, let me buy you a slice of pizza. Sit
Mm.
down with me over a slice of pizza, and
Mhm.
let's get to know each other a little bit, and again foster some type of understanding. But that's what,
Mhm.
like you said, it's so important. It's difficult, but it's really important to try to listen.
Yes, it is. And you also mentioned finding a way to expand. So that's what I heard, right? Finding ways to expand dialogues. Like other people can do what you're doing. Hey, reach out to organizations like Justice Southbury and talk about how it started, how it evolved, right? From standing on the street corner rallying to you expanded to a speaker series, you expanded to engaging people on social media, right? Your group is engaged there. Then it expanded to having themes, and as things arose, right, you let it evolve. Reach out to organizations like this. I'm just telling people, call them or reach out on social media, whatever information we put in the show notes, to contact them to learn how to do this thing too. We have multiple uh, organizations, multiple groups of people, communities that are doing great things, that if we only duplicate that, just in our sphere, man, we literally could take care of each other on this planet. I believe
Yeah.
it. When SNAP benefits were stopped as of November 1st, something just clicked in me. Like, what is people? There are
Yeah.
people who don't have food
Mhm.
because of an impasse among people who are eating,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
won't miss a meal, and in fact make enough money to pay for multiple people's meals and will get free meals because of their positions.
Yes.
And there's a mother who is disabled out there who has to figure out how to buy milk or how to get milk, right? It's a tragedy. So instinctively, something came over me like, okay, well, let's just clean out our cupboards. If we got two of it, that's one too many as of
Yeah.
today. We'll figure it out next week. And then I just texted some people, can you do this too? And I had some takers, and I'm so happy that I did, right? And some and offered, if there's somebody on this chain that needs something, let us know. If we only did that, they do that in Ghana and in many West African countries. It may be all of them, as far as I know. But I know for sure in Ghana. And I thought, yeah, that's why there's a little less crime, or a lot less crime, in terms of personal crime, people, stealing from one another, because that's a cultural value that you do not do that. You do not take from your neighbor. Yes. And
Yeah.
you don't let your neighbor starve. Like you will make sure everybody eats, that is in any proximity to you. We can do that. And there were times when many larger communities of Black people had to do that. And we did it. And I'm saying that time is here now. And it's more than Black people.
Sure.
And at that time, it was probably what some white folks too, and some indigenous people too. But I know for sure that there was a time in the history of United States American, our history, where enclaves of people locked arms to support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, but that's one of the things that we've talked about. Like, it just imagine if every community in America had a group like Justice Southbury. I'm not saying we're trying to lead some nationwide effort, but imagine if there were a dedicated group of citizens, not necessarily going out every Sunday afternoon and talking about things, but people who are focused on what can we do to make this place, our patch of land, a more fair and kind community for all. Like, if people took that seriously and worked towards it, you would have a greater focus on power for the ability to help others. And that's really, love your neighbor can mean lots of different things in lots of different circumstances, but it certainly doesn't mean let them starve.
That's right.
I think I've fell victim before to that mentality of, I'm one person in this sea of voices. What can I possibly do? And that can be a really defeating thing to think. And but I think, that's the same mentality that leads to low voter turnout. What's my one vote going to do? Well, when a million people say that, then that's going to do a lot. And so I think it just takes, you just got to start it, just like with Justice Southbury, starting that conversation, starting these weekly rallies, and hopefully a community will follow. I think it's easy to just say that someone else will do it. It'll get done. It's going to happen. It's not going to be me. But why not? Why not you? Instead of saying, why do I have to be the one to do this? Why not? Why won't you be the one to do this? When our small voices band together, creates that stronger cry, and then, you get a shout, and then that's when a movement becomes a thing. So I think, really getting at it, and again, I think this all the time. It can be a defeating thing to think, what really can I do? What am I doing to help promote change? But I'd much rather be doing something than not. And I think that's how you get things done, is just thinking, why not try? Why not try? See
Yes.
what I can do. Going back to those spheres of influence, we all have the power to create change. No matter how small this change can be, change is change. And it's also that mentality, that slogan of think globally, act locally. We want to change the world, and I think a lot of people want to change the world. I want to change the world, and part of that is starting with where I can have that influence. And I know in my small town of Southbury, I have an influence there. With my friends, I have an influence. With myself, I have an influence. How can I really capitalize on that and create that change? And then it grows from there. It's a snowball effect.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm telling you, y'all really are great at this. I'm like, "Oh, you know what I'm getting ready to ask you." I
Well,
mean,
because we're
this,
talkers.
yeah. So that is literally that would have been my last question. What advice you would give to others? And I just want to capture what I heard overall, right? You want to understand others, get to know them, right? Ask somebody for a cup of coffee, and you can do it online. I do 15-minute conversations all the time. Find a way, like with people who I meet online, find a way to expand your influence or create small dialogues. These things can start in people's living rooms. I do know of organizations that started that way as well. Help your neighbor. That is one thing you can do powerfully as an individual. And as Julia mentioned earlier, the greatest influence you have is over yourself, right? To doing the work to bring your biases to your awareness, what you don't know, learn more about people who are different from you, whatever that category is. Start small and ask yourself, why not me? Because as Julia said, and we're going to drop the mic on this one, there is no change that is too small. Mm-hmm. So again, I want to thank you both, Julia, Randolph, for joining me, spending this time with me and the Rooted to Thrive tribe. Tell the people how they can find you after this episode, and then we are out of here.
Dad? Dad?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I don't remember. I think I'm on LinkedIn as Rick Richardson. I'm on Facebook as Randolph Richardson, but we do have a Justice Southbury, Southbury, Justice Southbury Facebook page that you can ask to join. Those are the best ways to reach us. Julia?
Yeah, I guess the best way to reach me is Julia Bower Richardson, Bower. That's my full name. But I encourage everyone, any listeners who are interested in getting to know Justice Southbury more and joining our community. We do have a Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group and a public Facebook group. We post our rallies every week. The private group is more of a place where we can talk amongst each other in our group. We try to keep it a community that is a positive community. We've tried, there are other groups that we're part of on Facebook that can be very hostile, and we've created Justice Southbury, the private group, as a safe place where people can come to voice things in the community, where there can be calls to action, things like that. So we encourage you, if you'd like to join our private Facebook group, by all means do, but just let us know when you're joining. Hey, we saw you on Rochelle's podcast, and that's why we want to join. Because again, we want to keep it a safe and brave space for people, which I think is always important. But then we've got that public space as well. So
and you can
we're
also
always willing to connect.
Yes. You can also reach out at Justice Southbury, Southbury @gmail.com to email us.
Yeah. Excellent. And so we will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you all. So thanking you all, my guests, but also thanking everyone who stopped by and listened to the end. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, share this episode widely. I deeply, deeply appreciate everyone. And listen, the next time you show up next week, I'll be here waiting to welcome you back on Rooted to Thrive.